Good morning, Jamie. Hello, everyone.
Hey, morning, Shadab. Hopefully you're having a good weekend, and I heard you have a sporting event coming up today.
Yeah, that is true. Actually, I'm gonna have I think, a good day today. There is a match, NFL match going on today at MetLife Stadium, pretty famous stadium, and that's New York Jets versus Cleveland Browns.
I
Um,
hope
Not the
you
best of the lineup, but still, we're gonna have some fun
I
today.
hope you bring some good luck to the Jets. I know they need it.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, not a great season, but yeah.
Yeah, we can turn it into a sports podcast one day, I guess.
True.
But
Okay.
on that note, I know we have a lot of topics to discuss today. A lot of new things that have kind of fired up on the world of AI, and just one of the things. Speaking of firing up, Google fires back at Nvidia in terms of use of their new TPUs or tensor processing units. We'll get into that as well as some information about OpenAI and what they've kind of put out as far as paper as scientific discoveries and what that may mean for us as a human race. So stay tuned for that.
OpenAI and Google kind of dominated the entire week, actually. So there was also a Microsoft and OpenAI partnership that actually got evolved from whatever their existing arrangements were, and that actually opened up lots of new things that allows Microsoft to pursue now their own super intelligence as well as OpenAI to forge another partnership with AWS. So a lot going on with the OpenAI as well as Google.
Yeah, and one of the things with Google and a partnership is a partnership with them with Apple. We'll get into that. Microsoft did release some new capabilities as it relates to their M365 Copilot, specifically with some two new agents, that being the agent build and workflows. We'll get into that, plus a few other things.
Moonshot AI launched actually another new model, Kimi K2, and that's pretty good, pretty powerful model. That and more. We'll talk a lot more. Okay, stay tuned for a quick introduction.
Thanks.
Greetings. Welcome to the AI Files podcast. If you're looking to stay up to date on the AI, this is the podcast for you. I'm Shadab Hussain. I'm the director of AI at Microsoft, and I'm your co-host.
Hello, everybody. Jamie Basilico, as you know already. I'm the other co-host here for the AI Files. My day job is a data and AI technical specialist and architect. And as a reminder, please note this is not an official Microsoft channel, so the views and opinions expressed by myself and Shadab are our own and do not represent the views of Microsoft. So let's get into it today. I know you've got an interesting quote of the week for us on, I guess, from Nvidia's Jensen Huang. What did he put out there, and what commotions did he start?
Yeah, that was actually a bit tense week, I would say, for Nvidia. So quick background: Nvidia has been having a little bit of a tough time this week, and that's why Jensen Huang can be expressing some of his frustration as well. But I think it is not just frustration; it is also something that he sees on the ground. So what he said is he gave an interview to actually Financial Times, and it kind of indicated that China is set to win the AI race. And then, after some time, then they actually put out some clarification, and he said, which is again, it raises some headlines. He said China is nanoseconds behind US in chips. Okay, and Nvidia's Jensen Huang, he has been actually proponent of having the export allowed to China, even though US actually kind of stopped those exports, and then US allowed the exports as long as the chip maker like Nvidia's and AMD's, they pay 15% of that exports, plus as well as like a lower down version of the chips. Now they agreed to that, but then China actually kind of said that no, we are going to actually build our own. They have kind of actually shut down the sales of US chips in China, and encouraging the China companies to actually step up and build those chips. which pretty much means that Nvidia actually, Jensen Huang said that their China revenue is pretty much down to zero now. And his position is that, look, if we want to dominate the world's platform for the AI chips, we must allow this, because that's how you keep actually countries and companies hooked onto you and then dependent on you. But if you don't, then they will develop their own, which is exactly what is happening. So, kind of, like, of course, it's impacting this company, Nvidia is under a lot of pressure. We will talk about it, like, for comparatively, both in US, but as well as in China, they have pretty much lost all the grounds.
Yeah, and it's that thing in terms of timing. If it wasn't where China, let's just put it this way: if China wasn't capable of producing chips 3, 5, maybe 10 years down the road, I do agree. It's like, and have these policies in place that make it difficult for whatever they may be doing nefariously in China. But they're right on the heels of the capabilities that NVIDIA has, and I think anybody would be foolish to think that NVIDIA is always going to be the number one predominant chip maker and have such a large gap in terms of what the other chip makers can do. Yeah, they're experiencing that now, and I would argue over the last 3 years, but that's not going to stay that way. So I do believe that some of these policies need to be lifted. It will benefit not only Washington, DC here in the U.S., but also Beijing. So that's my soapbox, and I'll get off it now. But I do believe that's the right thing to do. So, are we done with NVIDIA, sort of? Because if not, I'll jump to the next one, which is sort of related to NVIDIA, but not exactly.
Yeah, I mean, it's all chips, Nvidia. Now let's move over to the next one.
Yeah, so like I mentioned, this one's not Nvidia directly, but it is. So Google, as we know, has been, I was going to say toying around. It's not necessarily toying, but they've been developing their own set of processors, both processors that focus on AI-based compute, as well as what I'm going to call the boring traditional like CPU type thing. So this past week, they just introduced Ironwood. So it's their latest custom TPU, tensor processing unit, supercomputer. But the thing is, it's not just about the chip. It's the other thing that they announced at the same time, which is they've got a customer, and that customer has agreed to buy 1 million of these TPUs. And if you know anything about the GPU TPU space, they're not cheap. So 1 million of these TPUs over the next couple of years, with the commitment of tens of billions of dollars, which in and of itself is a huge momentum piece for Google. Now, what makes this even more interesting? You want to know who the customer is? It's Anthropic. So Anthropic is going to buy many of these TPUs, and that's going to give them the price performance and the reliability that they need to keep continuing to scale Claude. Great model. I use it for my development for real customers, not just for the research. Now, here's the thing that is interesting when you look at some of the commentary that Google has made. So what they're saying is that it's not about the training of the models. Don't get me wrong, super important, and you need these, the GPUs to do the heavy lifting on training. But they're saying we're entering the age of inference. And again, everyone should know inference is all about, how do you get your questions answered by these models rather than the training. So it's about the shift between training these giant models, which is still going to be needed. And, I'm not saying or discounting we don't need to do any training anymore. There's always going to be new models that are created and you need to train that. But being able to serve the information from those models, the inference, being able to do that at low latency, and that's the sweet spot of what these TPUs are capable of, and it makes that shift. So what's interesting when you get into the architecture, these TPUs are based upon pods, and there's over 9,000 chips, and they act as one supercomputer within the pod. And what this does, at least for Ironwood right now, is it's 4 times the performance of their previous generation in terms of what it's been able to produce. And it does it with high bandwidth memory. I think it's close to something like 2 petabytes of memory. And what's also interesting, it's a self-healing optical network, which is important because when individual components actually fail, this is built-in redundancy into that inferencing architecture. So it gives throughput and availability within each one of these different TPUs, and that's why you can understand the money outlay that Anthropic just as one customer with tens of billion dollars on this hardware. Now, equated to what we just said, this is actually going to take money away from Nvidia. So Nvidia, again, as we talked about, what Jensen Huang just put out there is they can't stop at what they're doing. China will give them more money to do more research to build maybe those next generation GPUs or TPUs as well. So that's the headline with Google, at least for this one. We'll have some other things talking about Google. But remember what I mentioned about those boring tasks, like doing data preparation, doing web servicing and API service. You still need that stuff. It's not like you can't forget about all of those other tasks that our computers have been doing for X number of decades, really. So they're also coming out with their next generation CPU, and that's called Axiom. So again, this is for the non I don't want to call it non-interesting. It still is interesting, but you still need these CPU based. So they're putting out their next generation CPU with Axiom, as well as what they're doing with the TPUs with Ironwood. So again, this matters for us as consumers. Number one, it's going to give us choice. Will they make a consumer grade one of that? I don't know yet. Just in the same way that Nvidia does, but this will help large organizations, whether or not it's those foundational companies or maybe these make its way into what Google is doing within GCP. We'll see what they do as far as extent of their selling motions for this, but we know that they've got a big customer right now in terms of Anthropic for at least what Ironwood would be. So interesting times.
Cool. I think this chip war is continuing. In fact, this is an important market because the chips are like data centers, and the chips itself is a huge component of the spend right now. In fact, as much as 4% of the GDP is actually going into this. So no wonder, and the companies need to find these much more efficient, inexpensive ways of scaling. All right, let's talk about another big news that happened in the last 2 weeks. So there is this new next chapter of the Microsoft OpenAI partnership. And Microsoft and OpenAI partnership, as many people know, they have been actually locked in this agreement until 2030, which allowed Microsoft to be an exclusive provider of computing as well as the exclusive right holder to all the models. You cannot run those OpenAI models anywhere else except in Azure. And then Microsoft also has like certain dependencies, which many people were not aware, but Microsoft could not pursue its own super intelligence or AGI efforts as part of that partnership, and Microsoft had to use those OpenAI models as well. So there were some restrictions on both sides actually. But now that partnership has evolved forward as part of the plan that OpenAI has been trying to convert from non-profit to the for-profit because they have raised tons of capital, and as part of that capital efforts, they had to turn into the for-profit. Otherwise, they will lose all those. So this was an absolutely existential crisis for OpenAI, and which is what they've accomplished now. So Microsoft and OpenAI have reached an agreement, and Microsoft supports the OpenAI board moving forward with the formation of a public benefit corporation and the recapitalization. What it means is that in this new, now the Microsoft holds an investment in OpenAI Group, this public benefit corporation, valued at approximately $135 billion, which is roughly about 27% after the conversion. So I would say it's still pretty good, um, pretty good retention of the control of the Microsoft effort. Microsoft earlier had, I think, almost 49%. So it is reduced from that point of view, but of course, OpenAI has evolved a lot in terms of the valuation. So what this means is, however, once AGI is declared, earlier it was pretty much up to OpenAI to actually declare the AGI and then get out of that agreement. But now, if the AGI is declared by OpenAI, it has to be verified by an independent expert panel. Um, that actually gives Microsoft a lot more safety net. Um, the other thing is that Microsoft's IP rights for both these models and the products are extended through 2032, which include models post AGI as well. So, right, it gives them even extended run to have those IP rights. Microsoft's IP rights to research is also continuing. Microsoft has certain rights to research as well, even though the models don't go into the GA, they remain in the preview as well. Microsoft will continue to retain that right. Its rights also include those research IP rights, but then IP rights exclude any of the OpenAI's consumer hardware. So all the efforts that OpenAI is putting in working with Johnny Ive, all those IP rights are not actually included as part of this. OpenAI can now jointly develop some of the products with third parties, and the API products, however, they develop with third parties will be exclusive to Azure. But the non-API products, it's like this consumer hardware and other things, can be served on any cloud provider. And Microsoft can now independently pursue AGI alone or in partnership with third parties. As I said, this was actually restricted. Not many people knew that. Microsoft can continue to use the OpenAI's first party to develop the AGI. They can actually build upon that prior to AGI being declared. Of course, with certain compute thresholds. So there are some restrictions on that, but Microsoft can build upon that IP. The revenue share agreement, which is what has been a windfall for Microsoft, is is going to remain until the expert panel verifies the AGI. OpenAI has also contracted to purchase an incremental $250 billion of Azure services, and Microsoft will no longer have a right of first refusal to be OpenAI's compute provider. OpenAI can also provide API access to US government, national security customers, regardless of the cloud provider. And OpenAI is also now able to release open weight models that meet requisite capability criteria. Now,
So,
what
so
does
I feel I just went through a law class. There's a lot of stipulations in that. I'm just, I'm taking a step back as a role person, and they're like, to me, I'm like, wow, there's a lot of interconnects. There's some things that are consistent with continuity between the two companies, and then it seems like there's this, hey, we're going to go our separate ways, at least in some portions of the technology. Is that like a fair general statement on like this new partnership agreement?
I would say, Jamie, that I think this is a win-win situation for both the companies. Microsoft has retained what matters to them. OpenAI has gained what actually matter to them, right? So OpenAI is so thing that really was constricting both the companies. They have gotten actually out of it, and the thing that were not a problem, they remain. Like, for example, OpenAI doesn't have a problem in scaling up by being exclusively on the Azure. Anybody can use that. They can also go to OpenAI directly. If you are not an Azure customer, you can also always go to OpenAI directly. That's not a challenge, right? And that remains, so no problem. But the computing, right, the for particularly for the training and all that, and inference as well, the problem is that they were restricted with the computing capacity because Microsoft can only do so much, and there's just so much demand going on. So this allows them to actually use some of the computing capacity to train their models, etc., which was a problem. Now OpenAI has gotten actually a leeway there, right? So it's basically a win-win in my view. It's a win-win, and that's how I think markets are also receiving this. And both of the companies actually got a boost with that. Microsoft stock also jumped higher and other things. It allows new partnership and new. You can see a couple of new announcements that came right away. For example, AWS and OpenAI announced a new partnership that will enable OpenAI to run its advanced AI workloads on AWS infrastructure. And this is a $38 billion agreement, right? It's nothing compared to the $250 billion incremental agreement that OpenAI and Microsoft signed for the similar computing capacity. So, Microsoft is still going to retain the major share of the demand because beyond certain thing they can't even provide it, so it's not a loss for Microsoft if others are stepping in and providing it, to be honest. um, the other thing is that Microsoft has immediately formed a super intelligence team under Mustafa Suleiman, which Mustafa Suleiman called as humanist AI, to develop this super intelligence or AGI. And he's going to lead that with some of the other leaders at Microsoft AI, right? So this is also another new capability because, as Mustafa Suleiman said, and it's very evident that he said that a company our size not having our own AGI effort is very restricting, right? Because everybody else is doing that. Google, AWS, and of course the others are doing it. Microsoft was the only company that was not able to proceed on that forward. I think this is also a big, I would say, unleashing of the capability that Microsoft can develop now.
Yeah, and that last part is important, as as there's this, I'm going to call it quasi separation, which allows OpenAI to do its own thing. That would leave Microsoft then in a hole if it wasn't able to pursue its own efforts around super intelligence or AGI. So to me, it makes total sense if you don't have that safety net where OpenAI is actually acting as your AI organization, then you need to develop that in-house.
True.
So let's keep things going with OpenAI. Again, there's OpenAI and its relationship with Microsoft. There's OpenAI in relationship with other companies, but OpenAI also is a company in and of itself, and they put out really good content from time to time. And this one, I'll put in the corner of thought-provoking. So they released a white paper, article, whatever you want to call it, maybe a few days ago. And it's really focused on, I'm going to call it like the state of AI models and where we may be going. That's my personal take on this, but they're kind of sounding the alarm, for a lack of better terms, on what we're able to do today. But more importantly, it's the opportunity that's in front of us. So, paraphrasing what they put into this is that we collectively as the human race, but it's OpenAI and these other foundational companies that have built these models, is they've blown past like the various different milestones, like the Turing test as an example. And when you look at what these models can do, they outperform humans. Let's just be honest, in most of the toughest intellectual challenges. We've seen that from like simple things like playing chess to doing math challenges, science. I mean, the data is there. We've seen the benchmarking, the things that it can do. So what's striking and what they put into this article is, the pace at which these models are advancing. So what used to take, or what used to just be the ability for these tools or models, agents, whatever you want to call it, they were able to act, within a couple of seconds. All right, what's the most you can do with a model? Well, it would be measured in seconds, if you will. But what we have now, just today, we take these same foundational model, wrap them in agents, and they could scale, up to hours. We've seen that with Anthropic and their developer agents. Let it loose and it runs for 30 hours. But what OpenAI is saying in that soon, being able to have these agents run for days or weeks is not out of the question. So by the end of 2026, OpenAI is putting out there that they expect AI in general to be able to make small scientific discoveries. That in and of itself is great, but what's even more interesting is that they paint a path by 2028. So we're only talking, 3 years from now. These agents, backed by the models, will be able to make potentially groundbreaking discoveries in the scientific space. So what they're saying is that there's great opportunity just because of the advancements in the timeline that we've been able to do just in a short period of time. And again, if you think about it, the blueprints for being able to do these models and the things that we have now really only about 10 years old, maybe even a little bit less. But the time slice that we've gone through since 2021 to now is tremendous. And they're saying, think about what we're going to be like in the next 3 years. So here's the paradox of this. In that same paper, they talk about while the AI capabilities are accelerating, our daily life may not feel that much change. I think you and I see it most because we're dealing with AI day to day, talking with organizations, so we live and breathe it. But if you look at society as a whole, they're not actually ingesting, using, leveraging these tools, and if they are, it's minute details. So we're looking at basically how is this going to change society? So the upside here is potentially large when we think about, there could be breakthroughs in drug development, climate modeling, being able to do materialist science, but that could ripple across everything that we do within our everyday life. So what that means is, what risks does that pose? We were just talking about superintelligence, and the pursuit of that within Microsoft. So if those things are not controlled, alignment, the things could be catastrophic. So they're not just painting a dark picture. They're saying that the frontier labs, whether it's them, whether it's Anthropic, Microsoft, whatever it may be, they need to share safety standards between them. Governments should be able to build oversight in the things that are building to match the scale of which these AI models are, running at pace. So that's kind of where they kind of position this. I kind of put it out there as like this is their ringing the bell, if you will. It's like they see what's potentially coming, and I think that's the telling point is we only see what they put out. I guarantee you they've got the next generation intelligent model reasoning that goes way beyond what we see with GPT-5 or what Anthropic has with 4.5 or what Google's got with their Gemini Pro. They all have the next iteration of those models, if not two leaps ahead. So they know because they're testing it internally, is my guess. And they're looking at this and saying, it's sort of like that oh crap moment. We know what's coming. We need to make sure that individuals, governments, policies are there so these AI systems don't pose more of a risk. That's my take after reading this article. And by the way, we'll put in the show notes of the article. Take a read. Assess for yourself.
That's true. I think as you well said that many times it seems like this life is unchanged, and I see in a lot of people who are involved, people like you and I. I mean, like I often think about it that I can't live without AI now, to be honest, right? I mean, because so dependent on so many things at the work or even in the personal life. A lot of things that I do, I start with AI, whether it's vacation trip planning or the college application for my kids and whatnot. Everything is I'm so dependent, just like the mobile phone. But that's not a reality for everyone. But it is also reflected well in the numbers so far, right? Sam Altman also said that the OpenAI has now $20 billion annual revenue run rate, right? And that's a massive revenue, right? I mean, it takes companies hundreds of years to build that kind of thing, and this company, like in 2 years, is now has $20 billion ARR and about $1.4 trillion in data center commitments. That's just unbelievable, and it's not possible without the demand and the scale, of course, that they are getting. So yes, I mean, but still there's a huge potential out there, beyond what is also reflecting. um, but some of these numbers also, Jimmy, also were like being a caution, because like there are so many this loopy investments going on. Oracle invest in OpenAI, OpenAI invest in Oracle, and all these things that are going on that in fact created some kind of a bubble correction kind of thing in the market. A lot of companies, Nvidia, Oracle, everybody is actually down in past week because of, and part of this is that the Wall Street has started questioning some of the valuation. So overall, this is a larger picture. There is a huge demand. There is a huge scale that is happening. There's a lot of, as you said, like breakthrough discoveries that's going to happen. But on the other hand, part of the world and majority part of the world is still unchanged. People are not using it at all. But even in that smaller use, there is huge scale. But sometimes there are expectations that need to be corrected, and that's what Wall Street is also going through. That's a larger story.
Yeah, I agree. There's many different intertwined deals that are driving valuations of companies. I haven't looked at my portfolio. I'm not sure I want to this past week, but yeah, there's definitely some stress on the companies themselves on what will be actual revenues based upon what's being said in terms of contracts. Anyway, let's jump into a slightly different conversation, and this we kind of alluded to some things with Google previously with their new TPUs, but that's not the only thing about Google these days. So you remember this company called Apple? They've been trying, as we all know, to build their own AI models, and I would argue, and I don't think I'd get much argument back, that they haven't fared all that well in that endeavor. And if you remember, it was probably almost 9 months ago, maybe a year ago, they were in talks with OpenAI to bring OpenAI model to Apple, and you saw some of that in some of the Apple Intelligence or lack thereof into the iOS. But that wasn't, they didn't make a lot of inroads on what was supposed to be integrated, and a lot of missteps, let's put it that way, with Apple. But they were still looking at, well, what do we need to do to improve Siri, to really make Siri something that is AI capable, or at least integrated with that. So, there were additional talks. So jump forward to where we are today, they selected Google. So Google was in the mix, whether or not they're using Gemini or whether or not to go back to OpenAI. But it came down to using Google, and they're going to be paying a $1 billion annual agreement with Google to use not just the run-of-the-mill Gemini model that me and you might be able to use. They're actually going to use a customized model for Siri. So when can we expect this? I'm interested in this. I'm an Apple user with my shiny iPhone, and I do have a 15 Pro, so that's able to run the Apple Intelligence. But this is expected next spring, so 9 months from now, roughly, maybe a little bit less. So the model that's going to be powering this, and I guess they already have some details. I assume they're doing a fork of what is probably Gemini 3, I'm assuming, but this will be a 1.2 trillion parameter model. Blows away what Apple has built already internally. Their Apple's cloud-based model was 150 billion parameters. Their on-device model that they had created was 3 billion. So this is orders of magnitudes greater than just their cloud-based model. What's going to be interesting is this division of labor that is going to be for the devices. So the Gemini model is going to be used for Siri summarization and planner functions within Siri. So think of it as like, what do they do to synthesize information? How do they execute various different complex tasks? And Apple's models will still be run. They're going to support the other Siri functions and the things that are within the iOS. This is just where I'm squarely focusing on the more complex things within inside Siri. So everyone knows that Apple is high on security. And I kind of go back to, I remember some of the days of their commercials poking fun at the Windows operating system. So that still holds true today. So everyone, kind of puts Apple on a pedestal for what it can deliver in terms of security. So that is transferring over as well into this. So those Google models or the Gemini models, they're going to actually run on Apple servers. So that's going to ensure that data stays within the Apple environment, within their private cloud compute structures, and it's not going to be shared with Google. So if anyone has like, oh my God, I don't want Google having my data, they're not. It's still going to be Apple. They're just paying a large sum of money for those models. Now, here's the other thing that's interesting. So this whole project, which was called Project Lenwood, this is the thing that explored the different providers and the models. So it's not the project itself, Project Lenwood, which again is internally to Apple. It wasn't about performance. Like, oh, we're going to pick the Gemini model because it's the best performance one. Granted, we all know that the Gemini model is really good, but it actually came down to price. So, were they looking at Anthropic? Yes. Were they looking at the OpenAI model? Yes. So it came down to what is going to be the cheaper capability. To me, obviously, this is a good opportunity for Google because now they get that model out there. And what's always interesting to me, since it's Google actually has Android, so they're kind of providing some technology for their own competitor, but they're making money at the same time. One last thing on this, and this is the other interesting piece, is that Apple's not giving up on building a more sophisticated internal model. So even though they're outsourcing the foundational model for what is the complex things inside of Siri, they are still plugging away to build their own 1 trillion plus parameter cloud model. So yeah, we'll see. Have they done that up to date? No. So do I think they're going to be successful in a short period of time? No. So will this be something that might take 2-3 years or more? Probably, if they're successful even at all. But given Apple's size and their bankroll, I can't see why they wouldn't be successful. They just need to hire the right people. So anyway, that's the scoop on Apple and Google as they pair up to make Siri smart.
Okay, cool. Couple of quick fire rapid news, Jimmy. OpenAI actually launched something called Teen Safety Blueprint. This is basically a framework and guidelines to build the AI that protects, empowers, and creates safer experiences for teens. So it's kind of their need, because what is happening is that OpenAI is actually, again, there are 7 new families that who have joined that litigation that was going on about the kid who actually committed a suicide interacting with ChatGPT. That got expanded. Okay, so they know that this is actually becoming an issue, and I think that's why this safety blueprint is going to actually help them make this safer for the teens in the future, as well as it becomes a guideline for all other products as well. And it includes a lot of things, including predicting, not just asking for information and going by that, but predicting the possible age of the users. um, like if it is under 18, then this will automatically get triggered that way. In the other news, the Perplexity is actually going to pay Snap $400 million to power search in Snapchat. Perplexity is in a game for making sure they can capture as much as distribution as possible. They're doing lots of these deals. In India, they actually have partnered with a telecom provider to provide free Perplexity subscription to all their users, which is one of the massive, I would say, distribution. So they're essentially trying to get wherever they can, because of course they have to fight against Google and Microsoft and everybody else who has much larger distribution. Um, and one final thing, this is an interesting announcement, Jamie, that from Google, this is a project Suncatcher. Okay, I really like this because this is a research project. It's a moonshot project for them, where they're going to start doing the research about creating a satellite system. They will work with a company called Planet. They will launch a couple of satellites, and essentially create the AI computing capacity in the space. Okay, so leveraging the power of sun and putting those satellites above in the space, and that will basically have much more advantage, much more uh, higher ability to harness the power of sun rather than on being Earth. And this is a research project. It's going to take a long time, but and the project name is as simple as that, sun catcher, right, which clearly signifies what is the intention there.
Yeah, I saw that in the news as well, and like it caught my eye, no pun intended, as data centers in space. So let me talk very quickly about some new capabilities that Microsoft put out specifically around agents inside of M365 Copilot. So hoping everyone knows that there's existing agents that Microsoft has developed. One being researcher and the other one being analyst. Those are great. Literally one for doing research. The other one, as I like to say, it's sort of like a data scientist in your pocket. But they released two additional ones. These are under the Frontier Labs agents, which basically is, I don't want to say beta testing, but it's more like first use of the agent. So without further ado, the two agents are App Builder and Workflows. So what's interesting about both of these is that it's integrated into the Microsoft 365 Copilot world, which means that it's grounded within content that organizations construct or build, things like spreadsheets and documents. So it has that to pull from in terms of context, aka knowledge. So App Builder sounds like what it is. This allows you to build applications by using natural language to describe it. So we can build things like dashboards, calculators, various different task trackers without needing a database. So it actually sets up storage inside of SharePoint as lists and uses that data. So once you create these applications, it's very easy to share that with other colleagues that are within your organization. The other one is the workflow agent. Again, it does what it sounds like. This is where you can automate tasks. And if you think about from an organizational standpoint, let me build a workflow that will look at my inbox, sort and segregate, maybe be able to send emails on my behalf automatically based upon my priority ranking. And like I said, it can pull from all of the various content, but it could work across different tools inside of the Microsoft 365 ecosystem, things like Outlook, Teams, SharePoint, Planner, as well as in the approvals process. So if that wasn't enough, what makes this interesting is there's security and governance built into these tools, again, because it's part of the M365 ecosystem. So all the things that are there for security and compliance still flow through. There's role-based security control that the admins of the M365 tenant can apply into these two new agents. And without further ado, let me just show you real quick. This will be a very short demo. I'm going to keep this to like a minute or two on what this actually looks like. Just got to find my screen.
Microsoft 365 Copilot is becoming a very large platform, essentially an ecosystem of all kind of capabilities. It's basically a landing page for all the enterprise users. They start there and then do everything there, and it's becoming a connecting page for everything else.
Yeah.
It's a good evolution.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you can see on my left-hand side the various different agents that either I've built or pulled in from the organization, and then down below are like all the different chats, notebooks, and the things that are tied into M365. The way I like to kind of explain this is you've got ChatGPT coupled with agents, coupled with Notebook LLM, and access to all of the M365 tools like Word and SharePoint, all within one space. So it's pretty easy. Anyway, that's not what I wanted to talk about. This is the App Builder. This is one of the agents. You have to, quote unquote, install the agent. It's basically a pool of different agents that are out there. Like I mentioned, this is in the Frontier, so you'd have to go to all agents and then add the agent in. I'm not going to bypass that one, but basically I did that already. So you can see I've built two agents. One I did, both of them I did yesterday. One I just modified a little bit. But you basically start out by saying, what do I want to build? I could say, let me build a tracker for AI-based opportunity wins that I can share. So that's literally what this one is. I got to change the name of this thing, but when this opens up, this is the use case tracker. So this is actually building applications. Don't think of this agent is not like where you're building agents. That's what Copilot Studio is for. This is an application that gets built by using an agent where I can describe what I need that application to be. Go back maybe 2 episodes ago where I was showing what Google has within their AI Studio to build apps. This is basically the same equivalent, but now inside of M365 Copilot. I think you're going to see this on all of the major players by being able to build applications using agents to make it easier to build in. If you want to call this vibe coding, I wouldn't, but this is really about having a contextual idea and then making an application. This one happens to be rooted in the things that are within your organization's and Microsoft Graph, aka all those things that you create. So, like I said, I put in one small prompt, so this whole thing is not actually done yet. But this is a use case tracker. As I mentioned, any data I put in here actually gets stored back in SharePoint. I didn't create any of this. This is what was done off of a very small prompt that I used. And you can see if I go back to, it'd be good if I can click on my screen. If I go back to the app builder itself, you can see in here the ability to just start to describe your application. Anyway, like I said, that was a very quick foray into the app builder, the workflows. I didn't create a workflow yet, but you can see what's here. This one I'm going to try to build something later on today, because I know my inbox has many different emails in it, and sometimes, especially when I go on vacation, I don't really want to be checking emails while I'm on vacay. So this, I can build the workflow that actually will triage and parse maybe something where it really needs my attention, and it can come back to me, or maybe start to do some research for me and alert me for that. So again, just start putting in here what I want it to build, and it goes off and builds that workflow for me. And obviously, there's some pre-existing sample templates that I could use, and this one's like missed important emails. Anyway, those are the 2 new agents. Definitely, if you have access to M365, go install it and use it, and let us know how you like it. Anyway, turning it back over to you, Shadab.
Great. One more launch actually this week. Let's talk about Moonshot AI, which launched a new model, Kimi K2. Kimi K2 is basically a state-of-the-art mixture of experts language model. It has a 1 trillion total parameters, but only 32 billion activated parameters. Kimi K2, it comes in 2 versions. Kimi K2 Pace for fine tuning, and Kimi K2 Instruct, which is basically for chat and agentic tasks. It is optimized for agentic intelligence. It has a lot of autonomous problem solving tools, calling, reasoning, and all that. It has 384 experts for scalable training, and it is pre-trained on 15.5 trillion tokens. So lots of good innovation, and I would say that it is pretty decent model. If you look at this comparison here, you can see that it does pretty well compare against some of the others. Now remember, it's an open source, right? So it's available on the Hugging Face. It's an open source, so they're comparing that against other open source like DeepSeek and Quan models. They're also comparing that against the proprietary models, which are like Sonnet 4, Opus 4, but not with the highest settings like extended thinking. And also, they're not comparing that against GPT-5, but also GPT 4.1 and also Gemini 2.5 Flash. So, in that segment, it's not like I would say the biggest and the highest capability models they are comparing against. But I think it's in the next level of the um, other frontier models that they are comparing against. So I think it's pretty good model. It is, I believe, in the LM arena, which basically goes by the voters, like the users voting, their experience based on their preferences, etc. What they have seen when they compare the models against others. It is, I think, in top 15 or so at this point of time. So, not the top of the chart, but it's still top 15. So pretty good model. By the way, this company Moonshot AI, this company is actually also having investment from Alibaba. It's backed by Alibaba. It's also having some investment from Tencent and others. It's a company that was actually founded by a few fellas from China, Yang Ji, I believe. And the name actually has some funny story. Moonshot is basically a name inspired by Yang's love for Pink Floyd's album Dark Side of the Moon. Right, that's how this Moonshot actually the name came from, because it was his favorite album and the band, and mine too. Pink Floyd was also my favorite band. So I found it funny. But yeah, otherwise this model is available. You can go and check. It's available on the web and mobile. Anybody can go and play with it. It's open source. Anybody can go and try it. So it's like API and open source both can be actually used commercially as well. So open to all. Okay, great. So I think, Jamie, this was pretty much the entire week. Just one more thing. Okay, there was actually a new paper that came out. Okay, this paper is as simple as it's available on archive.org. It's basically how do AI agents do human work. So what it did is this paper actually compared the agents and humans on specific tasks, like same task. And what it found is that the findings are published in the paper. Basically, you can see here on the chart that whether it's data science, English, admin, writing, design, and all those kind of tasks, um, humans do better, right, in terms of the quality. um, so compared to the agents, humans do much better, or significantly better when it comes to the quality. For example, on some of these parameters, agents are at 52.1 and humans are at 82.3. In some of the cases, it's even 25 for agent and 91.7 for humans. So humans do it still much better. But when it comes to the efficiency, agents are far more efficient because they are far more like they're fast, and they can cut down. Like you can see here, the humans can take multiple steps to do certain tasks. The agent will do it very efficiently in much less tasks. So it is fast, it is inexpensive, and it's a decent quality, right? So for many of the things, it may be just about decent quality, but it's going to be also very inexpensive and fast. So that's the benefit of the agents, really. And this is a good paper. I would recommend that anybody is interested, go by the title, how do AI agents do human work, and then you can find out all these things. Okay, great. I think that's all. That's all when it comes to this week. Anything else?
No, I think we covered a lot and did it within under an hour. So not bad.
Yes. Enjoy, everyone. I hope you like this. Keep listening. Bye,
Sounds good.
Jimmy. Bye,
Thanks.
everyone.